comes courtesy of our friends over at The View. When I say our friends over at The View, I mean the low IQ idiots who are on panel at The View. And yes, you are a complete stupid idiot. My God, she is so stupid. This is the same lady who thinks everything is racist. Everything and everyone is racist, except Hitler and the Holocaust. Genius, Whoopi Goldberg.
Shapiro has built a solid reputation for ruthlessly tearing apart the delusions of The View with his sharp wit and no-holds-barred approach. Known for his ability to expose the absurdity of the show, Ben insistently criticizes The View as a platform where uninformed women spew their opinions on trending topics. And let's be honest, most of their commentary is nothing more than poorly researched, factually flawed liberal takes on current events and mainstream media stories. Ben Shapiro's disdain for The View is no secret, but let's talk about why he finds it so laughable and often infuriating.
Lifelong ambition to actually be a guest on The View. They'll never have me on, of course, because it would go horribly for them.
To Ben, one person stands out above the rest when it comes to stupidity, and that's none other than Whoopi Goldberg. Known for her over-the-top commentary, Whoopi never holds back, often making jaw-droppingly foolish remarks that Ben has no problem calling out. In this video, we'll dive into some of Ben's most memorable reactions to Whoopi's most insane blunders on The View. And trust me, there's a lot to unpack. Let's start with one of the most infamous moments, Whoopi's shocking remarks about the Holocaust.
The Holocaust isn't about race. No. It's not about race. No, it's about
a different race.
But it's not about race. It's not about race.
What is it about?
Because it's about man's inhumanity to man.
No.
Ben couldn't believe his ears when Whoopi claimed that the Holocaust, the single most racially motivated genocide in modern history, wasn't really about race.
It's not about
race.
But these are two white groups of people.
Not only is that the worst clip in the history of The View, that is the worst clip in the history of television. Like, all of television history.
For Ben, who is Jewish, this was not just an offensive statement. It was an outright historical distortion. Whoopi's take was not only ignorant, it was downright delusional.
Goldberg is obnoxious and stupid beyond all measure. The Holocaust was not about race. Ask the Nazis. The entire Holocaust was about race. All of it. Which is why they didn't just pick on Jews who observed Judaism. They picked on anyone who had quote-unquote Jewish blood. The entire thing was about race.
Ben's reaction was both scathing and hilarious. He couldn't wrap his head around how someone who constantly makes every issue about race could possibly deny the racial motivations behind the Holocaust. For him, this wasn't just a simple mistake. It was an attack on the very historical facts that define the Holocaust. The mass extermination of over 6 million Jews isn't just a random act of man's inhumanity to man, as Whoopi put it. It's a targeted, racially charged genocide that has shaped the course of world history.
Man's inhumanity to man. Nope. It is about a genocidal attempt to exterminate the Jews, which has a thousands-of-year-old history. And yes, it was rooted in race.
Ben wasn't just frustrated because of his Jewish background, though that certainly played a role. He was also appalled by the idea that someone like Whoopi, with a platform as big as hers, could get away with watering down such a pivotal event in history. To try and reduce the Holocaust to just another inhumanity is, to Ben, not just ignorant, it's offensive.
And yes, you are a complete stupid idiot. My God, she is so stupid. This is the same lady who thinks everything is racist. Everything and everyone is racist, except Hitler and the Holocaust. Genius.
And it doesn't stop there. Whoopi's absurd comments on The View aren't just limited to her ignorance about the Holocaust. Oh no. She's also made ridiculous comparisons between the US and Israel to terrorist organizations like Hamas and the Taliban.
And comparing the US, Israel, Hamas, and the Taliban as all terrorist organizations. And she has maybe way more knowledge and experience in the very complicated Middle Eastern relations. But I did find that being on a foreign committee and comparing the country to a known terror, those are organized terrorist communities, that, not Israel, but Hamas and the Taliban.
Ben could hardly contain his disbelief when he heard her make such a comparison. But predictably, Whoopi doesn't back down from her inflammatory rhetoric.
And that
Depends on who you talk to.
right. Well, I mean, that's how they're recognized as terrorist organizations.
But it does depend on who you talk to.
Well, they're
It really
recognized
does.
in this country.
Depends on who you talk to. Whoopi, always available to sign in to both compare Israel and the United States to terrorist organizations and also compare terrorist organizations to apparently not terrorist organizations. Like, Hamas is not a terrorist organization?
Let's see what Ben has to say on this.
Oh, man. It is amazing because Whoopi is sort of seen on this show as sort of the wise old sage. And I have to say, you need better sages.
BenShapiro, ever the critic, took the opportunity to call out Whoopi for this nonsensical and blatantly false equivalence. He couldn't understand how someone with such a huge platform could be so brazenly wrong about something so fundamental. The idea that the US or Israel, democratic nations that operate within the rule of law, could be compared to terrorist groups is not just idiotic, it's borderline dangerous. But even Ben can't deny the entertainment value of it all. Whoopi's sheer audacity is almost too much to handle, and Ben doesn't miss a chance to roast her on it. There are countless moments when the other women on the show can barely hold back their disbelief, but they usually stay silent, likely out of fear of the backlash they might receive from their fellow panelists.
Interesting that a lot of the English language has to be rethought. Blackmailing is negative, black sheep, negative. I can think of a few others if I had the time, but those words are kind of like embedded in our psyches and maybe need to be changed. Why is a black sheep a bad thing and a white sheep is a good thing? Why? They're just sheep.
Well, it's not the words. It's not the words, it's the way we think about it.
Ben finds it absolutely comical how often Whoopi spouts off such low IQ statements, and even more comical that no one seems to call her out on it. It's as if there's an unspoken rule on The View where everyone pretends that her outlandish opinions are somehow worthy of consideration. And if anyone dares to speak up or challenge her, they risk being labeled the odd one out in a sea of cluelessness.
You're right, Joy. Probably they started saying black sheep versus white sheep, not because of the commonality of the sheep, but because of black people in, like, rural Europe. Nailed it. Yeah, it's about, what, African-American sheep. This is so stupid. It's about black male, like black people male in the...
This pattern of behavior is not limited to Whoopi. Another key figure on The View who frequently attracts Ben's criticism is Joy Behar. Like Whoopi, Joy has a knack for making wildly inaccurate, poorly thought-out statements.
I don't think that kids in this country are learning our history. They're not learning about slavery. They're not learning about Jim Crow. They don't understand the history of black Americans in this country. If they did, they would then understand white privilege better. So my suggestion is start teaching this stuff. It's deplorable, again, that word, that they do not learn history, period. I mean, people who are young, under 50, don't know who FDR was.
And Ben doesn't hesitate to call her out on it.
What is she talking about? We all learned in school about slavery and Jim Crow and FDR. Honestly, it's the people who are teaching DEI crap in public schools who actually don't care whether the kids know who FDR is. Those kids don't know the first thing about history. But they know that people are victimized.
For Ben, Joy's eagerness to defend marginalized groups often leads her to make statements that, ironically, are more racist than anything she's trying to condemn. Ben has pointed out on numerous occasions how Joy's attempts to appear woke end up backfiring. In her rush to show her support for racial minorities, she often ends up making gross generalizations that undermine the very causes she claims to champion.
She said, I grew up in a world where a woman who looks like me with my kind of skin and my kind of hair was never considered beautiful. So, do her words resonate with you at all?
Because you're a black person?
It's no surprise that she's frequently called out online for her lack of self-awareness. And if she continues down this path, Ben believes she may just overtake Whoopi as the most ridiculous voice on The View. But the absurdity doesn't end with race and politics. Ben's criticism also extends to Whoopi's comments on issues like abortion. In one particularly memorable moment, Whoopi decided to berate men for having an opinion on the fate of fetuses.
Any of you men have any eggs or the possibility of carrying a fetus? How dare you talk about what a fetus wants? You have no idea. I'm fine if you disagree with abortion. I have no problem with that.
Yeah, you do.
My problem comes when you tell me what I need to do with my doctor and my family. How dare you?
How dare you?
How dare you?
Ben's reaction was, as always, spot on. He pointed out the glaring hypocrisy of her stance, particularly in light of the fact that liberal ideologies often promote inclusivity and fairness. Yet here she was dismissing the voices of men, people who, as Ben humorously pointed out, were once fetuses themselves.
I have many questions on this, as it turns out. First,
transphobia.
Massive transphobia. If you don't have eggs, you can't. Are you saying that some women can't be men and some men can't be women? Are you saying that unless you have eggs, you're not a woman? Is that what you're saying, Whoopi Goldberg? Also, if that is the new standard, how about women who are postmenopausal? Whoopi Goldberg? Can they have opinions on? I mean, you can't have a baby right now, I assume. How old is Whoopi Goldberg? She's in her 60s.
This moment perfectly encapsulates what Ben sees as the extreme liberal logic that runs rampant on The View. It's as if the show operates on a kind of intellectual double standard where ridiculous, illogical, and often contradictory statements are not only tolerated but celebrated. The idea that someone like Whoopi, who claims to be the wise, experienced elder of the panel, can spout such clueless, factually incorrect opinions on such a major platform is beyond absurd.
Also, I noticed another thing. I can have an opinion on what a fetus would think because I was once a fetus. In fact, spoiler alert, all of us were once fetus. Every single one of us. I know, this is crazy. And you know what I can pretty well guarantee? Fetuses don't like being stabbed in the face and sucked into a sink.
BenShapiro knows all too well that The View provides an endless stream of material for anyone willing to point out the glaring stupidity. And while many might see his critiques as harsh, it's hard to deny that the level of cluelessness on display is hard to ignore. If Ben were ever invited to appear on The View, it would undoubtedly be a disaster for the liberal hosts, as he would have a field day tearing apart their arguments with his trademark speed and logic. And while Ben jokingly claims he'd love to be a guest on the show, you can bet that a lot of viewers would love to see that day come too. If Ben ever had the chance to engage with the hosts of The View in a live debate, it would be nothing short of a train wreck for the liberals. Fans of logic and reason would be watching closely. That's all for today, folks. Thanks for sticking around until the end of the video. Which moment from The